Hey everybody, welcome to the Real Late Show with Chris and Craig. I'm Chris, got Craig with me. Hey Craig, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Chris?
Good. Lots of off the record talk, which is good,
Yeah,
but
yeah. That's always
we're
fun. The
yeah,
stuff that you can't hear is probably some of the funnest stuff that we talk about.
it's stuff that might get us most in trouble. So thank goodness we didn't record during that part. So excellent. But we got a lot of fun pop culture stuff. I don't know if it's fun, but well, let's see. Let's
Yeah,
take a look at
a
these
lot of stuff
stories.
going on. Yeah.
Yeah, this was about a week ago, and I didn't talk about this with Robert, and I wanted to bring this up. I like history movies. I like movies about stuff that's happening or remembering a famous person. You
Yeah.
know, sadly, what was it like 2 years ago? We lost John Madden,
Hmm.
and now we're doing the epic about John Madden. I was stunned when I heard this news. And I'll admit, I haven't thought about that much the last week or two, but looking at the story, I'm still surprised. Nicolas Cage is going to play John Madden.
Yeah.
I don't know how to react to that.
Yeah. I don't know either. It's I mean, I've heard of this in development and was kind of curious about it. Obviously, Madden was a good coach, and he's probably most known by people today for the stuff he never did on the field, which was the video game and in the broadcast booth, um, the turducken on Thanksgiving and everything. So I think a lot of people, my age and younger don't know John Madden really as the football coach, just knows that, that's where he came from, but made his hay in the video game world and also in the broadcast booth. So hearing about a movie about Madden, I wondered how they would approach it. Would it be a full biopic of his life? Because was his life that interesting as a head coach? But then you could also maybe argue that he sort of was a trailblazer for a lot of color commentators, really kind of gaining popularity outside of football fandom. And then of course he was the not the vision but the name behind the video game series that you know year what 30 years later, 31 years later, whatever it is, it's still going on, or 29 years later. So it's pretty interesting. And then of course you have John Madden being played by Nicolas Cage. And also too, that something that piqued my interest was David O. Russell is going to direct. I love David O. Russell. He's kind of a love-hate guy though, because some of his movies are kind of maddeningly bad, and then some of them are extremely good. Like Silver Linings Playbook is a fantastic movie. So I'm interested to see how all of this comes together, and it does seem like they're going to um, hone in a little bit more on this being the origins of the NFL's video game. The Madden football game, which obviously has decades in the can now. Every year it's an annual title release for people. People stream it. People have a lot of big following that that play the game online. So it's very interesting to see this all come together and how it might come together, and what kind of tone I think they set with this type of movie.
Yeah, I'm seeing the article I shared with you, and I'm just checking the date to make sure I'm not too far past. Hollywood Reporter story. It's saying that their sources are telling them it's going to focus more on the video game part of his career. I'm sure you're going to have references to his broadcasting and
Yeah.
his coaching career, but it's going to focus more on that. And from what I remember, I think especially initially, he was really involved. I mean, obviously he's not programming the video game or playing as much, but just in kind of talking about the play and the strategy and trying to kind of make that a little bit more realistic. It's going to be interesting, I think.
Yeah, I wonder, is it going to be like some of these movies we've seen in recent years? Like the Jerry Seinfeld movie Frosted, the Pop Tart story. Is it going to be something like that where people really hated it and had a lot of disdain for it, or are they be serious about this and try to make something more along the lines of some of the movies we've seen? Um, about the GameStop stock market surge and things like that. So I do wonder. I think with the people attached to it, it makes you more interested, at least for me, because I know these people who are attached to it. So for me, it kind of shows me that it's got a chance to be good, but it could also fly off the rails and just not be very good at all.
Yeah, if his focus is more on the video games, could we have like a Madden biopic about his coaching career? And could we have a Madden biopic more focused on his broadcasting? I don't
I
know.
think, yeah, I mean, I think the broadcasting, thing would be more interesting because, he really became a larger than life personality. And I think he paved the way for a lot of, color commentators to, you know, be a personality as opposed to just talking about what happened or what went right, what went wrong on a play. And he's an Emmy-winning broadcaster, so he's not a slouch in that regard. Yeah, he was known for catchphrases and things like that, but I think he also, made the game interesting. As you're watching it, and kind of broke things down. And I think that's kind of all you can ask for from a color commentator.
And I'm kind of wondering about this too. I'll kind of give you an idea of a later topic I want to talk about. Well, first of all, is this going to the box office?
Well, it's going to be an Amazon movie, so it's hard to say. Amazon has kind of dipped their toes in the water on on theatrical release, but I doubt it. If it does, it might get a week or two kind of a release, but I think this is more of a
Prime deal.
Yeah, like we're Amazon, we have all the money that we could ever ask for, so we're going to just throw money at whatever we want, and this is something we can do. And whether we take a loss on it or not is irrelevant because, like in the case of Apple, yeah, you don't want to take loss after loss after loss on movies and TV, but those are the only two streaming sites that can afford to take a loss on a movie because they're not about that. Amazon is about Prime and about all their goods that they sell and deliver. So this is just kind of like a fun thing for Amazon to do, and that's why they can afford to take more risks with that. And then if it pays off, then you can say, hey, if you want to watch this movie, you have to come to Amazon Prime to do so.
Well, and this has been in development for a couple of years. I saw an old story saying they were possibly looking at Will Ferrell about playing Madden in the past before they decided on Cage. But I'm kind of wondering. I'm a Netflix guy now. I'm kind of made the choice. I dropped ESPN Plus. I'm not a Netflix guy. And I'm seeing with Netflix especially, they're doing a lot more sports content. So they're working with LeBron's company. I saw an episode of Receiver. They have like a quarterback show.
Yeah.
I think they're doing. Is it on Netflix? There's a show kind of looking at LeBron's career and a couple other NBA guys.
I'm not sure about that, but yeah, you're right. Netflix is really dipping its toes into the sports world. And, I think that, their biggest fish that they'd like to kind of reel in would be live sports so they could sell advertising, things like that. But I think they're trying to whet the appetite of some of the, they're going to have WWE starting in January, so Netflix is really thinking outside the box right now because, the traditional thing that they've, hung their hat on is just blitzing you with content. And they still do that, but now I think they're starting to look at, let's get away from some of the, random Joe Schmo thrillers that no one watches or some of the, reality TV that people might like, but then kind of like don't really care about it. They just put it on in the background. But now there's, they have like a Steve McNair documentary right now on Netflix. So I think there's a lot of money from Netflix, and I think they're starting to try to maybe whet the appetite of sports fans to come over to Netflix. So then maybe that way they can, bid on some of these major league contracts and say, we're going to get a football game. We're going to get college football. We're going to get whatever. And I think that's ultimately what they want to do. And that's a big reason why they, got into that contract with the WWE because they want live broadcasting rights to sporting events, and the WWE is going to give you a weekly 3-hour program, and they're going to have premium live events, so they're going to have live, the library of events. So Netflix is really trying.
Well, and you see that. I mean, Netflix has picked up more NFL doc content, and now
Mhm.
you got the two Christmas Day games. So I can see how that is going together. I kind of wonder, though, if there's two ways you could look at it. You can do the Madden biopic like they're doing with Nicolas Cage. That might be on Amazon. Or maybe will you see more older sports documentaries? I know some of these guys aren't there anymore. I mean, John Madden's not alive, but you could still do documentaries in the 70s. I mean, there's players that are still alive that played in then. Who knows?
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I have not watched the receiver or quarterback, docu series that they have, but I kind of feel like that's the appetite right now. Is people like older generation may want to harken back, but they've got NFL Network for that kind of stuff for like the 1970s and 80s, and you know profiling great teams like the Raiders or Steelers of yesteryear. I think people now kind of want new fresh content, like behind the scenes types looks, like you get with HBO going all in now on Hard Knocks, where they have off season, you know, training camp as they've always had, and then now they are going to have even a more expansive in season. And I think that's what people like. That's what I like. I like the idea of sort of getting a snapshot of what things look like behind the scenes, because we can watch all the games and we can get some of the mic'd up players that the NFL Films does a great job, but then sometimes it's just unique to see the certain stories that kind of come out of some of these docu series.
Yeah, and let's quickly get into the next one.
Yep.
I'm a little nervous about this. So, anything about somebody in the news like Madden, I like the Madden video game. I'll probably check out the Madden movie because of that. I like the news part of it. I know it's not really a strict documentary, but anything like that, if it's funny or if it's serious or semi-serious, I'm in. So I want to check that out. There's a Ronald Reagan movie coming out, and I think it might be this weekend if I recall correctly.
I do believe it is this weekend.
Okay, here's my fear. I know we're in a super political environment where anything could be interpreted politically, but I'm seeing some more of my right wing friends, which is fine. They can post whatever they want. I don't care. But they're like, man, conservatives need to check out this Ronald Reagan movie. Oh, okay, is this going to be a legit Ronald Reagan movie, or are we just playing to a political crowd? What have you heard about this so far?
I haven't really heard much, and that's the fear that I have, is that, Ronald Reagan was, yes, it's, we're talking, 40 years ago at this point, but, I think Reagan was a president during a tumultuous time. And I feel like because of that, a biopic about him would be more like there'd be more interest. And it's not, I don't think it's the, oh, well, we don't want to see a Republican, president's biopic, because I don't think that the intention was ever to make a lot of money. But I think the biggest issue maybe for me though was, I think it was, I can't remember exactly when W came out, the Josh Brolin biopic on George W. Bush, but it obviously was a little bit more timely than this one is. But I just feel like because we're not really seeing a whole lot of information come out, other than it, to me, kind of seems like it's, and Dennis Quaid is a well-known actor, don't get me wrong, but to me this kind of seems like one of those made for TV movie type movies, or a movie that would be on like the Fox News Nation streaming app, where it's just not really like super backed by a studio. It's not, you know what I mean? And that's the biggest problem that I have, is that it doesn't seem like there's a backing for it, like people really, and plus, it's coming out in the middle of summer, well, the end of summer now, and you really didn't get like some well-established, well-known director to direct it. So I just kind of feel like, is this just kind of a weird cash grab that probably is not going to make a lot of money, because it's, and I'm not saying that you have to advocate for everything being a studio movie, but it kind of seems like one of those movies that's going to be rough around the edges and maybe not well written, not well produced. And it probably could have been better than that in the right hands. And I wonder if it was just coming to studios with an idea like, hey, we want to do a Ronald Reagan biopic, Dennis Quaid's in. I think people would be okay with that, but then maybe they're just like, what's the appetite for that? Do fans want to go to the box office in the middle of August, in late August, and go see a movie about politics? I don't know. It just seems like it's thrown together and more or less kind of seems like a low production value type movie that, you just want to get out and tell a certain story, and maybe that story will take liberties with, politics or characterizations of people. But yeah, it just seems like this is probably destined to be, floating in the ether of movie world at this point.
Well, I'm just hoping, and every movie will take some liberties. I mean, we joke around a lot about the Lakers, obviously I took a lot of liberties, so I get it. You're not going to have a TV show or a movie that plays it 100% true of what happened. I'm just afraid in today's political climate. I don't want hey, he's buddies with Trump during the movie or something. You know what I mean? Just play it down the line, tell his story. I think the best type of movie is whichever way you're voting in November, you could go to the movie and say, that's interesting. It's interesting how he lived his life. You know what I mean? Where it doesn't, and again, I don't know. It may be perfect like that. I'm just afraid. I'm seeing a lot of right-wing people going, I got to go see that movie. I'm like, hopefully we're not, doing an agenda here with this.
Well, and it may or may not. I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be, pro-leaning that way. But it may or may not be the movie that they think it's going to be. Like you said, it may not really bounce into the daily politics that we're experiencing in this generation. I don't know that it will or should even, because the politics of then, even though it may seem similar, it's not really, in my opinion, very similar. So I think it's, I don't think it's going to make a lot of money at the box office. It kind of gives me the feeling of, the Kirk Cameron movies where they're kind of they're super produced very quickly and they're just kind of low budget and really preachy or not really coherent to some degree. I think that kind of makes me feel like this, even though Dennis Quaid is a well-known actor and he's, been in some great things before, I just feel like that's kind of what this looks like to me.
Okay. And again, it's a history movie. I'll probably check out sometime. I may not run to the theaters to see it, but I'm sure it'll be on some streaming service in the near future. And I think I've got every streaming service on demand now, so I'll probably check it out sometime. But I won't be super excited, I guess. What might be a way of phrasing it. So, all right. That's a little bit of a bummer. I just got... When I first saw the trailer, I'm like, oh, cool, history movie, I'm in. And the more I read, I'm like, this could be rough. So that's good.
Yeah. It just doesn't look like... I know a lot of people were split on the George W. Bush biopic that Oliver Stone directed, but you had backing. You had a great director who's made some great movies. You had a great actor playing George W. Bush. And you had a studio behind it that said, go make the movie that you want to make. Now, obviously, some people are going to love it. Some people are going to hate it. And it was actually kind of tame for Oliver Stone. Usually he's, dealing with a lot of conspiracy theories and things like that. But this was more of a straightforward biopic. But it actually worked very well. And I think whether you're, leaning left or leaning right politically, I think you could sort of find some appreciation of the type of story that it told.
Or maybe we need to look at it. Like, if you're like me and say, I like history, I like news, I'll check out for that. Maybe we need to just not even going in with any agenda at all. You know what I mean? Well, go into the W movie, understanding that it's probably not going to be 100% accurate about Bush. Great, whatever. Go into the Reagan movie the same way. Maybe we can enjoy it more if we don't get too worried about it, like I do.
Yeah, I mean, this movie is supposed to be set during the Cold War, which, there's a lot of intrigue right off the bat, for something like that, because we are always living in a world of political tension. So it can be very topical to today's society, even though it's 40, 50 years ago. But, you just kind of wonder how it's going to all unfold on screen.
Sounds good. A couple of things. Obviously, we'll have the links with the podcast, but I shared with you a story from one of Mahoney Match providers, Tribune Content Agency, kind of looking at some movies they think you should look out for this fall. Was there any movie that stuck out to you? I'm sure. I know we've talked about some of them here, but is there anything you're excited about from seeing this?
I think there are a couple. And one of them is going to be a limited release Apple TV Plus. That's Wolves. That's the Brad Pitt, George Clooney pairing. I think that there's the problem that we're facing this year with TV and movie is we are a year or so removed from a writer's strike that lasted several months and an actor's strike. And because of that, a lot of things got delayed and a lot of things didn't get made in time for a 2024 release. And I think that's what's going to happen here with the rest of the year. You're not going to see a lot of new things pop up. But Wolves is a movie that, has some intrigue. George Clooney, Brad Pitt teaming up. John Watts is directing. He directed a lot of the most recent Spider-Man trilogy. Another couple of movies that I'm interested in. This is a movie, Megalopolis is a movie that Francis Ford Coppola has kind of dreamed up for decades now, wanting to make. And he actually spent his own money, all $100 million budget worth on this movie. It got a lot of jeers and cheers from people at the Cannes Film Festival for basically it being a mess of a movie. But I also kind of want to see that because I like when directors are ambitious and take chances. So I am interested in that. I don't know if it's a movie that I'll get to in theaters, but it is an interesting idea, and I just kind of want to see. It's kind of one of those where you want to see it for yourself, because when people say that it's terrible or it's a mess of a movie and it just didn't come together, you still kind of want to see it just to see. Another one is The Wild Robot. I think we saw the first real full trailer for The Wild Robot at Inside Out 2, and I think it looks very interesting. The animation style looks good. And I'm very intrigued to see where they take this. And it could be one of those movies that, doesn't have the big Pixar and Disney backing. And maybe it's, something that turns out to be interesting and very good. I think the last one on my list of this list here of the fall season is probably Anora. This is a movie that probably a lot of people will have no clue about until it kind of hits them in the face, because it did so well at the Cannes Film Festival. It won the Grand Jury Prize, and I think a lot of people are excited to see this one because, again, in a year of movies that there aren't really a lot of options because of the strikes from last year, this is a movie that's probably going to have some staying power from its Cannes Film Festival debut and getting a lot of Oscar nominations. And Sean Baker is the director, and he's made a lot of interesting, really like micro indie movies that have been very well received. They just were never on the Oscar level scale. And I think this is a movie maybe that gets him more into the mainstream as a film director, that people maybe are interested in seeing more of his work. So this is the kind of maybe breakout that he can have to where he's going to be able to get the type of money that he wants for whatever movie he wants to make.
Any hope for Wicked?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it appears that it's going to be told in at least 2 parts, which interests me. I don't really love that method of filmmaking. I think it's better to have one singular movie that may be good split into 2 parts, and maybe you can continue telling a fuller story in a sequel. But it's very rare for a movie that has a part 1 or a part 2, and this has been sold, I guess, as it's going to be 2 parts. And I just feel like when you do that, you kind of leave people in the lurch a little bit, and you leave people wanting more. You can still make a good movie out of that. I think the animated Spider-Man movies have done that, where they have a Across the Spider-Verse was, I think, last year, and it was a really cliffhangery type movie going into this next one that I think will come out next year. So they can be successful. It's just sometimes it leaves you wanting a little bit more, and I wonder if Wicked can get away with that, or if it can hopefully tell a full story that has a good enough conclusion to where we don't have to worry about waiting for another year or 6 months to watch a second part of it.
I got a selfish reason for Wicked. My daughter loves Wizard of Oz, so we've watched Wizard of Oz a variety of times. I got her into Wicked. I think on YouTube we found a pretty well done theater version of it. So I showed it to her, and she's black, so she enjoys that part of it. We're trying to. She has special needs. So she's 12. She doesn't quite understand, being born a different color and everything. And we're trying to kind of give her a understanding of that a little bit. And it's sometimes easier said than done. So I don't know if Wicked would be something she would enjoy or not. So,
well, I think it's going to look beautiful. I mean, the trailers have made it look that way, and I think a lot of people are going to be, assuming the music is probably similar to the play or the musical itself, or maybe they take some liberties and have some new stuff too or added to it. But you've got some really talented vocalists. Cynthia Erivo is a terrific actress, but she's also a great singer. And I think a lot of people that maybe have seen her in shows and movies that have popped up, and maybe don't know of her ability to sing, are going to be really impressed with her. And I've always been impressed with Ariana Grande's voice. I think she's got a tremendous ability to hit high notes. And I think it'll be a good, well sung movie. And I think there will be quality production design. And I think a lot of it's just going to be about what kind of a story are they telling? Are they sticking to the source material? Are they expanding it out for the sake of having multiple parts of this franchise? Or, are they telling a coherent story?
Yeah, definitely. I also shared a story about TV shows. And again, there's a million of them out there, but review gave some ideas. Let me give you two that I kind of like.
Yeah.
I watched the reboot of Frasier. Not super excited about the first season.
Yeah.
They're bringing back a lot of old characters the second season. You'll see a little bit more of Roz, Bulldog, Gil. He's going to go back to his old radio station for an episode. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm willing to give it one more season. It looks interesting. I'd like to give it a chance. I just want to be a little bit more excited than in the past. And I'm seeing some good things again about Ghosts. I need to check that out. So those are the two I'm looking at. Was there any from that list that stuck out to you?
Yeah, I mean, Ghosts, has been a reliably funny show. And, heading into another season, I think that it'll continue to be that way. I will say there are two, and they're both going to be HBO shows. And one of them is not actually on this list, but I think it qualifies given that the list goes into the month of November. But the first one is The Penguin. And this is Colin Farrell starring as the Penguin, kind of carrying over this character that he and Matt Reeves developed in the Batman movie that came out a few years ago. And this is going to, sort of springboard into the next Batman movie that those guys do with Robert Pattinson. So I'm very interested because, the Penguin in the Batman Returns movie, the Danny DeVito movie, was sort of the psychopath, but he was also very, comic like. And I think that was a big problem with some of the Tim Burton superhero villains that he had in the Batman universe. But, the Penguin that came out in the Batman movie with Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson, was a gangster-like criminal, which is kind of what he is, but it's not so reliant necessarily on him being a penguin or looking like a penguin. It's just his nickname, and he just inhabited this character of a ruthless gangster, maybe a mid-level gangster at that point, but somebody that will, rise to a little bit more prominence, probably in the world of Batman. So I'm very excited to see that. And then the other one, sort of piggybacking off of another intellectual property that we've seen, is Dune Prophecy. So this was a show that was announced quite a while ago, and everybody kind of thought, well, when's it going to come out? Because Dune 2 got pushed back into this year. It was supposed to come out late last year, but because of the writer's strike, everybody wanted to kind of hold off on it. And I think they also capitalized on knowing that the release schedule wouldn't be as challenging. And Dune 2 did well at the box office, and it's probably going to clean up quite a few Oscar nominations as well. But then they announced Dune Prophecy, even after not really knowing if there would be a part 3 for the movie franchise. They announced Dune Prophecy was coming out this year, which was a complete surprise to at least me, but probably a lot of other people that knew that this was in the hopper, but they didn't know how far forward it was going to be. And it, obviously this is going to be another probably densely told story of this Dune franchise and of this universe. And I'm just interested to see what they do with, essentially 6 hours of TV as opposed to, 2 hours and 45 minutes of film.
Okay. Looks pretty good. And I wanted to close tonight. Like I said earlier, made a change. Took advantage of what was the new Hulu Max Disney deal where you could combine services.
Yeah.
Needed to slice off one streaming service. Really wasn't getting the bang on my buck from ESPN Plus. So ESPN Plus, you're out. Netflix, you're in. So I'm in Netflix. And
made the call to the bullpen. All right.
Yeah. Now, again, I'm cheap. So I'm on ad supported. So I don't have everything. But help me out a little bit. I gotta admit, when you and Robert talk Netflix, I glaze over a little bit because I don't have it. But I'm looking for good things to watch. I'm thinking about two. I'm not a big Jerry Seinfeld fan, but I like that kind of humor. I need to check out Frosted. I'm assuming it's going to be available for me on my cheap tier. And I also want to check out Murderville. Robert was talking about that. What else? I mean, I'm sensing the same thing I've sensed before with Netflix. There's a billion different titles there. Sometimes it's hard to get through.
Yeah.
What else new should I check out? Give me a recommendation or two I can add to my list.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure if you're into the gothic science fiction-y fantasy stuff, but Wednesday is a pretty fun show, and I know they're going to be having another season of that coming out at some point. But Jenna Ortega plays Wednesday Addams. It's an Addams Family reboot, reimagining, whatever you want to call it. I think she does a great job in that show, and I think it really kind of holds your attention. So I think that would be something that you might have interest in. If you like that sort of stuff, I think it's pretty tame for the kids if the kids want to watch it as well. So I will admit, though, right now the Netflix watch has been very soap opera-y stuff. Sweet Magnolias might be something your wife might want to watch. It's kind of this small town, close-knit community of people that go through a lot of the daily melodrama of friendship and relationships. So, that's a show that we kind of binge watched. I know right now, Too Hot to Handle, if you're looking for something just absolutely just mindlessly terrible, but you can't look away from the car crash that it is. It's obviously a very, adult, but it's a game show essentially where singles that enjoy their other sex's company go to an island to try to learn how to not do that as much. But it is a show that's actually kind of interesting, and you do see some growth from some of the characters. So it's not, all just terrible, sex stuff and all that. But right now, I think, for me, it's kind of exploring Netflix more. I think I've heard some good shows out there that, I've had people tell me to watch. I have shows that are on my list to watch, like The Queen's Gambit is a show that I wanted to watch. But right now it's kind of, sometimes you divide your time up. My wife and I did start, and we haven't watched the other show, Bridgerton, which is like super popular, I guess. But we started watching randomly Queen Charlotte, a Bridgerton story. It's we've only been like maybe 3 or 4 episodes in. It's not bad. I mean, I don't really know what Bridgerton's about other than maybe power dynamics in the England, hierarchy of kings and queens. But it's kind of held our attention and has a little bit of intrigue, I think.
Okay. Sounds good. Lots to check out, man. Yeah, but I'm trying to do a little better in checking stuff out. It's still kind of hard. Got the dumb Big Brother that I continue to follow. That, my goodness, that show is such a chore to watch. I mean, like
Yeah,
Survivor is on once a week. So if you're into Survivor, you watch it 1 hour a week and you're done. Big Brother, there's like
yeah.
100 episodes a week. It's like, it's almost like baseball expanding the 200 games a season. I mean, let's cut it down a little bit. We don't need more. Less can be more.
Yeah, one show on Netflix that I think you'll enjoy because it is only a once a week deal, and it would probably give you now again. My Big Brother knowledge is zero. Essentially, I maybe watched like 1 or 2 shows ever, and I know it's been on for forever. But The Circle is actually a very fun kind of like Big Brother game show, but they don't interact with each other in person. They do it via messaging, and it's kind of like a digital age, which is kind of unique as well. But you can go in and play yourself and be yourself and try to team up with people, or you can catfish and be somebody different and play the game that way. And it's a very fun game. It keeps it's an entertaining show. And the good thing is you don't have like 6 shows a week to watch. You only have like 10 shows or like 12 shows in a season. So it breezes right by.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll have to check that out. The other thing that's been a little bit distracting, to be honest with you, my Steelers. In the past, usually this time of year, they don't do anything. They don't make any moves. They just they're there, and you're like, all right, let's wait for the season. Craig, every night it's like, oh, we're changing quarterbacks. We're trading big guys or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not stopping tonight. Brandon Ayuk, a guy who's potentially on the move, he did not show up for practice day. And the 49ers said, we need you to start practicing. We need to get ready for the year. So now there's speculation saying, does this mean he's on the move? And the Steelers are probably the likely destination if it happens. So we're going to try to do a Steelers podcast tonight and keep one eye on Twitter to see if a trade happens or not. And I'll be frank, the Steelers need a receiver. Ayuk could be a great move for them, but I'm tired of this back and forth, dude. We've talked about this for months. I mean, either make the trade or don't.
Well, it seemed weird how they announced Russell Wilson as their starter, as if anybody thought, was there really, did anybody think otherwise in that situation?
I think the question with Wilson was he got hurt earlier in training camp, and Fields had a pretty good couple weeks of training camp, and some people were saying, hey, maybe, and see, here's the other thing. Both Fields and Russell Wilson are 1-year contracts.
Yeah.
So I agree with Pittsburgh. It makes the most sense to start Wilson as your starter. I think Wilson's got the potential to be above average. I mean, he's not the franchise guy he used to be. But the question then comes, well, what happens at the end of the year? Fields is going to be 36. Wilson's going to be 36. Fields is much younger. Do you give Fields a chance and see what happens? It was interesting. In Tomlin's announcement of Wilson as a starter, he said, no, Fields is going to play. Okay. So do you see Fields do a drive or two a game? Do you see him try to adopt the old Cordell Stewart / rule? It'll be interesting. I don't know.
Yeah.
And your Lions beat my Steelers in the preseason. Preseason this year's been really weird. Not many guys have been playing. Yeah. I know a lot of the Steelers haven't played, so we just got to wait till regular season. I will tell you, Craig, I think the Steelers are going to have a slow start. I think there's way too many new elements to their team, but I think as the season goes on, they could be pretty good. But without an IU trade, I think they're an 8 to 10 win team. Maybe they win one or two more if they get IU. It's kind of where I'm at.
It's kind of interesting with them, though, because, they're kind of in this no man's land where, they've been good, but not great, and they have not been bad to the point where they can really draft like a top 5 quarterback. Obviously they tried Kenny Pickett, and that didn't work, and that entire draft class has been just terrible. But the quarterback draft class of that year, 2022. But, I do wonder, though, if they get off to a slow start, would that be a good thing? Because maybe you put Fields in and say, take it away and we'll see what we have. Because if not, if they're just okay with Russell Wilson, is that what you want to be then what do you do for next year? Or do you maybe get off to a slow start and say, well, we'll see what Justin Fields do, and if we sink or swim, we'll know where we're going to be drafting next year, and next year's quarterback draft class may not be bad. So, I kind of wonder if this is a year where the Steelers kind of need to take a step back to get to where they need to be in the future.
The issue for the Steelers, I mean, hey, if they lose a lot of games, they lose a lot of games, but they always want to be competitive.
They're always competitive, and that's probably been their issue because, if they or they could have been one of those types of teams to say, we feel like we're a quarterback away, so we're going to trade for a draft pick. We're going to trade up and draft a quarterback or whatever it may be. So they've kind of been in that, like, they're too good to be bad and they're not good enough to be great. And in the NFL, sometimes you need to take that big regression back to go big steps forward. You know what I mean? And, I think that if they can find they've always been one of those teams. If they can find a good quarterback, they're going to be very competitive because their defense is always good. And they always seem to be able to run the ball in spite of what always seems to be a maligned offensive line. So they're a fascinating team, and they're going to be very fascinating too on Hard Knocks in season when they do the entire AFC North. It'll be interesting to see what the records are at that point, but it'll be fascinating to see like some of the inside looks at the Steelers and, maybe if it's just how they go about doing things that have made them so consistent, or, maybe if the wheels have fallen off the train, maybe they'll look completely different on that show. But I'm kind of interested to see Pittsburgh and, kind of fascinated as to, how they operate and maybe how they, go about doing things, while it's on camera.
I just want Hard Knocks now because I'm sure they're having some conversation with San Francisco after the news of Ayuk today, and I'd love to hear how that conversation's going.
Well, wasn't it weird how a couple of days ago it seemed like they were closing in on a new deal with Ayuk, and now all of a sudden it's like, no, maybe? I mean, obviously things can fall through pretty quickly. I mean, I get that, but it seemed like when they're in the process of, they seem to be saying that they were in the final stages of, getting something done, and they just needed to kind of, dot a couple of I's and cross a couple of T's. And now all of a sudden it's like, well, he's not showing up to practice, and maybe it's just better to trade him.
Well, there's a couple of problems. One, I don't think I knows what he wants. Rightfully or wrongfully.
He wants to be the man, I think. He wants to go to the team. Well, he wants to be the number one on the team. And he may be that, but he also may just be one of those guys that's a really unbelievably talented number 2 receiver. And that's fine because, the 49ers, right now everything's okay because they don't have to pay Brock Purdy. But once they have to pay Brock Purdy, things are going to get a little tight around San Francisco. They're not going to afford everybody then.
It's tight now. That's $75 million over the cap next year. Trent Williams is holding out, and I don't think you have to pay Purdy today, but I think next year or two you got to pay him.
I do believe he's going to be extension eligible next season, or maybe he's extension eligible right now and he needs to get an extension, but one way or another, the 49ers are going to go from paying him like $700,000 to like $55 million.
Right, and that's the problem because if you pay Ayuk, if you pay Trent Williams, you've got to lose somebody else. I mean,
you've got McCaffrey, you've got Deebo Samuel, you got Joey Bosa, or no, they got which Bosa do they have? Nick Bosa.
Yeah, I mean, you can't pay everybody. I mean,
Fred Warner. I mean, they've got a lot of, and I mean, obviously with the salary cap, it's you can defer money and push money to down the road, and the salary cap, while real, it's not really the money of it. Like the money of it's about how much the owner wants to spend. But I do wonder though if San Francisco is just like, well, we don't really want to spend that kind of money on a wide receiver that may or may not be a dominant guy.
Yeah, and just I mean the issue, you just in the NFL you just can't pay everybody, and that's the problem. I mean, you just can't. I don't know. It's tough. It's pretty rough. And then real quick because I'm up against it. Our Etc. show, lots of weird stuff going on that we need to talk about. There is a pizza place in Australia that you can buy now, pay later.
Okay.
Yeah, which is strange. We have video from the Iowa husband calling contest where women get up and they demonstrate how they call their husbands. It's weird. We'll show that video. There is a Colts fan that wrote a theme song about his team, and it's sung to the tune of a popular praise and worship song. It's very strange.
Okay.
There's a internet push for if you buy a lot of stuff from Amazon, you should pay your delivery driver because they come to your house every day, which is kind of weird. RFK Jr. has a story about he once cut off a whale's head and tied it to his car.
Okay.
True. His daughter told the story. I'm like really weirded out. And Trump had a quote saying, "What would happen if Jesus counts votes in California?" So I mean, all kinds of strange stuff. Okay. We'll look to get over. So, well, Craig, always good talking to you. We will stay in touch. Lots of stuff on the show, lots of stuff off the show that I will update you on as soon as I hear more. We'll have to see what happens.
Right. That sounds great.
And Robert, we missed him tonight. Robert is tied up. So for Robert and Craig, this is Chris.
You're Chris.
Yeah, I almost forgot. Have a great night, everybody. Talk to you later.